Hello, welcome to the Trews. The Trews is the news. If the news was true, the true news. I'm Russell Brand, your host. Subscribe to Trews here to receive it every day. It will unfold across the course of your life like a beautiful poem. Today, we're looking at the figure of Tony Blair, former PM, envoy to the Middle East, and a man who says we should follow his views and advice on the ISIS crisis precisely because they are the same terrorist forces he battled during that war he done. Let's have a look at him talking now and explaining why we should keep listening to him.
A group like ISIS, as you can see, they are brutal, they kill without mercy, and they're prepared to die without regret.
That describes Tony Blair really well. Also, he kills without regret or mercy. He is proposing the exact same thing as he's already done once to solve a problem that he himself caused. That's amazing. Like, wouldn't you think that if you'd done an illegal war that had resulted in widespread chaos and destruction, that he wouldn't turn up on the telly again for ages saying, let's do another war? Like me, I won't ever turn up on the telly going, right, okay, never do prank phone calls against beloved sitcom characters of the 70s, because people will go, you've done that.
That makes them a fanatical force.
He's a fanatical force because he's being really dishonest and disingenuous and continuing to maintain his perspective in light of evidence to the contrary. He still won't admit that that was an illegal war, even though that we know that dossier was sexed up, even though there were no weapons of mass destruction found. That's his own form of fanaticism. Say Tony Blair started to wear less conventional clothes, you would immediately go, he's a lunatic. Say he turned up say instead of having that fruit bowl beside him, he wore it on his head during interviews, you'd go, he's a fucking lunatic, that geezer, never trust him.
You can contain, possibly, by air power. You can harry and hem them in by air power, but in the end you are also going to have force capability on the ground. Now, I'm not saying we in the West need to do this. It would be better if it were done by those people closer to the ground who've got the most immediate and direct interest in fighting them.
He's the person with the most immediate and direct interest in fighting them, or at least Western corporate interests are powerfully represented in fighting ISIS. You know, like since he's not been Prime Minister anymore, he set up something called like Tony Blair Associates, goes around advising Kazakhstani dictators, Kuwaiti oil firms. He does have a direct interest.
But I don't think we can in all circumstances rule it out. And after all, we do have the force capability to do this.
Barack Obama has ruled out any possibility of ground troops. So too has David Cameron. You're saying they're wrong?
No, I think the president is doing exactly the right thing.
Such a bunch of little snides. Well, I think the president's doing exactly that thing. Don't worry about that bloke. Is he in shot? He's always here. From now on, during the Trews, that man's always going to be there. He's the secret mastermind behind all our videos.
I think he's built a big alliance of countries. I mean, he and John Kerry have put together some 50 countries in this.
There's such a obvious corollary and interrelationship between these people. You know, like in it that David Cameron and Tony Blair are meant to be the opposite parties to each other. They're meant to be oppositional parties. They just endorse one another and support one another with absolute impunity.
No one is wanting to see armies back in their occupying territory. It's not necessary and probably not wise to do that.
Whilst nominally Tony Blair and David Cameron, our current Prime Minister and our former Prime Minister, are meant to be opponents of one another, literally oppositional parties, there's so much in common with them and such an obvious allegiance. David Cameron could easily shut down or at least impede the progress of Tony Blair's associates. That's what his business is called, Tony Blair Associates, where he does all that thing like advising people. And Blair's premiership was endorsed by Margaret Thatcher. So that was a switch from Tory to Labour back to Tory, in which the leaders all have allegiances and alliances that completely undermine any notion of true democracy and true representation. These people are actually allies with one another, and so while we're dealing with the serious issue of a potential war in the Middle East, even on a domestic level, this shows that we don't have any freedom, we don't have any actual choice.
There may be situations already. There's enormous help being given to those on the ground through intelligence, through military training.
Intelligence, military training, giving them guns and weapons like we've done in the past that caused these problems in the first place.
Through helping arm them, helping support them in all sorts of different ways. I think as policy evolves, there may, and I only say may, there may be a role also for some force capability.
And just to be clear, that for you means boots on the ground.
Well, it means someone's boots on the ground for sure.
I don't like these boots on the ground. I don't like it when there's these glib pieces of language that veil the actuality of the situation. Boots on the ground means, oh, look at these boots. There's a foot in them, and that foot leads up to a person, and that person's got a heart and feelings and a family. When they say boots on the ground, they mean people on the ground. They mean people from our countries going over there, getting involved in the conflict that supports their economic interests. It's like a piece of glib language. It won't be Tony Blair's boots on the ground. It won't be Ewan Blair, Tony Blair's son's boots on the ground. Those boots will all be safely in England, safely under the banner of Tony Blair Associates.
Now, that can be the local fighters. So Iraqi forces, the Kurdish forces.
Yeah, Kurdish boots. Little Kurdish boots. They probably curl up at the end and there's a bell on them. We don't mind about those boots.
My point, though, is very simple. All of our experience teaches us that unless you're prepared to fight these people on the ground, you're not going. You may contain them, but you won't defeat them.
What they done last time is fought them on the ground. That's exactly what they did last time. It didn't defeat them. He said we're fighting precisely the same people this time that we fought last time. Last time we fought them on the ground, and now we've got to fight them on the ground again. So even if the only information we had was the information contained in this clip, the man is lying and doesn't make sense. But this isn't the only information. They're continuing to lie about why they went to war last time, and I think it's safe to assume they're lying about why they want to go to war this time. These people don't act out of empathetic motivations. They act out of economic and financial motivations. We know that by now. Look at dear old Tony Blair's face. We can never trust that man again. This is the face of someone not to trust. Just sort of like mark it up as the same way as you would a picture on a milk carton or a poster of a nonce. It's just a person not to trust ever again. Further indications are we can't trust them on big international issues like war, the most important thing a country can be asked to do. They can't be honest and candid and transparent about that. It also shows that our entire democratic structure is based on subterfuge, duplicity and mutual cooperation between parties that are meant to be representatives of ours. That's clearly not the case. That is the Trews. Trews is news if news was true. Subscribe here for more Trews. Don't trust no one, don't follow leaders, watch your parking meters. Thank you.
Nose is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the nose if the nose was true. I want some Trews, let's have some Trews.